Very much. A couple of quick things. We're on Rumble here. I know there are people that would like to make it here. We're not able to. We are live streaming and recording. And so we're going to turn it over to Mark here in just a couple of minutes. But then if you want to ask a question, I need to ask you a favor of you. Please be sure to use the microphone either. And this one here, and what you have to do is talk into it like this, not to the side, okay? So, and that's so that the people that are watching and recording can hear what you're asking. Another quick thing is, this year I'm sure most of you have heard. If you haven't, you need to. This year is actually the 250th anniversary of the founding of our nation. The Declaration of Independence. July 4th is the 250th anniversary of that signing, and so, it is something to be to celebrate. None of us would be here today if it wasn't what happened 250 years ago. And so we need to remember that, and we need to continue fighting for the things that our founders fought for. And on that, and a lot of us, we need to understand a little bit about history. What did happen 250 years ago? And KID News Radio 106.3 and some ladies from Stand Up for Idaho actually putting together a historical minute that you advertise every that goes through the week. And then on Thursdays, like tomorrow night at 5 p.m., some of the ladies will be on the Jolene Thomas Show talking about what happened about 250 years ago. Well, what happened 250 years ago about this time frame. And so tune in and listen to that. Also, to celebrate our founding, and that Stand Up for Idaho is raffling off this flag. It's a nice wood card flag. I think it's a one-of-a-kind, only one in the world, really, that's like this. And we're raffling it off. If you'd like to have it and whatnot, $20 for a ticket. We will actually award it just after July 4th. And so it'd be a good thing. Also, like I say, if you want a raffle, talk to Cindy back there. She'll sell you a ticket or 10. We're also revamping our website. I ask you to go look at that. It's called standupforidaho.org. And take a look at that. Let us know how we can improve it, do some things. We want to make it more information, getting more information out for everybody. So another thing is, most of you from around here at Freeman Park have seen the 1,000 flags that are flown at Freeman Park during the Memorial Day weekend. That's put on by an organization called the Exchange Club of Idaho Falls. And it's a nonprofit organization, and they're up doing it again this year. And they actually raise money to benefit everybody across the, in the county and around the region here. In fact, they've donated to Stand Up for Idaho and our Constitution Camp for Kids. So if you're interested in sponsoring a flag or anything like that, here's a little pamphlet there. We have some up at the table. It's a really good organization, to celebrate America and all that. Real quick now, next week, we're going to have gentleman Steve Adams. He's actually the mayor of Sugar City, little burg up there, okay. But he's going to talk natural rights and the Declaration of Independence. I actually heard him a few weeks ago at the East Idaho Homeschoolers Conference down in Pocatello, and he had a very good presentation, and it's something that we ought to pay attention to. I asked him to come and talk to us about it, and he's going to do that. Like I say, he'll come and compare the concept of natural rights and the political systems built on that idea, modern understanding of civil rights and the concerns that bring to good government liberty. I'm not going to go through all of this, but he's actually has quite a little bit of a resume, and come and listen to him next week. We're all about America, and the great country that we have, and we're here to fight for our country. And most of us, now look at me, it's not necessarily for me, but it's for our kids and our grandkids, and we need to be paying attention to that. And with that, I'm going to introduce Mark Fitzpatrick. One of the things that happens in Idaho is not as red as you think it is. That's one thing I have learned over the last 5 years that I've had Stand Up for Idaho. It's not what we think. I'll be the first to admit I was naive. I thought something different. I got started in looking into little things, and I found out, things are not what I thought it is. And so one thing I've always thought is that it is very good to have every elected position challenged. because that holds that official somewhat accountable. If a position is not challenged, they get complacent, they get arrogant, they think that they can do what they want, and before long, be blunt, they've sold us down the road. And so with that, I'm going to, like I say, Mark Fitzpatrick is running for governor as a Republican candidate. The election will be this May. May 19th is the primaries. In Idaho, generally the one that wins the primary as a Republican ends up going on and winning the general election. So it's important to pay attention to our candidates and listen to what they say and vote May 19th. Don't forget that. Now, Mark has stated this, and I pulled this off of his website. Idaho was founded by pioneers who didn't ask permission to live free, and we shouldn't have to either. I'm running for governor to restore a government that serves the people, not political insiders. That means cutting taxes, shrinking bureaucracy, defending parental rights, deporting all illegal aliens, and putting Idaho families first. This state isn't for sale, and it's time Idaho elects a governor who isn't either. And so with that, let's give Mark a big hand and thank him for coming and come all the way from Boise. So thank you, Mark. Get you to stand up there so we can watch it.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. Truly is. And thank you all for showing up. My name is Mark Fitzpatrick. As he said, I'm running for governor on the Republican ticket May 19th. And I think that we're probably preaching to the choir here. Most people in this room are aware about May 19th, but a lot of your friends and family don't. So it's our obligation to go tell them. If we want people to show up on that primary, we need to tell them how important it is. But I want to show you something, and then I'm going to tell you a story about it. And I'm going to hold it up, and you tell me what you think of it and what you think it is, what it looks like to you. Redaction, right? And what have we seen this a lot in recently? Epstein files. Somebody said everything. I like that everything answer. Because it feels like we're not getting the full truth on anything these days, right? And when we have a declassification, it usually winds up with a whole bunch of redactions to it. So we're only getting part of the story or part of what they're revealing. And so the story about why I'm holding this particular piece of paper is because I sent in a FOIA request to find out from the state of Idaho why my companies were put under a tax audit. Okay? And so I got back an email from the person in charge of documents. I don't know their title, I'm sorry. And they're from the state, and they said there's attachments to the email, and I read through all the attachments and everything. And the one place where it says the reason why I'm being audited is right here, up in this part. It says history, and that history part is the part that explains why my businesses were being audited. But I do have a few ideas. I'm going to tell you a story about things that happened just before this, and you can be your own judge. And I'm not saying, maybe it's just a big coincidence. But let's see. We were end of November, and I was, I had just, it's been a few years of standing up for what's right and true, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But at the end of November, I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at who's going to run for governor race, and I saw that there was nobody that appeared to be a serious contender for our current governor. And I thought, maybe that's why I just went through these couple years of all this stuff I went through. And maybe that's why I made all these enemies and also a lot of friends on the other side and supporters. And maybe God had prepared me for this, and this is the reason why all that happened. And so I decided to start praying about it. And I said, I'm going to kind of walk that direction, inch that way. And I said, Lord, if it's your will and you want me to do this, show me. And he showed me. A few days later, I did something that is not terribly unusual for me as the owner of Old State Saloon, which is in Eagle. It's a restaurant that I own. I did something not terribly unusual. I put something out that was a little bit contentious online, you could say. And what I posted was an offer, and the offer said that for anybody who helps ICE by giving them information that would ultimately lead to the deportation of an illegal, that we would give them free beer for a month at Old State Saloon. Well, the world kind of went wild about that, and it was the second time that that happened to me. But this round, it went wild. And, first some big accounts started sharing it, and there was getting a lot of views and everything. And then, I don't know, maybe it was an hour later, I saw the Department of Homeland Security shared my tweet about giving free beer away. And they did it in a pretty unbelievable way that makes you kind of wonder about, wow, what a crazy time to be alive. The Department of Homeland Security is using a clip from a 1980s or 90s sitcom of a dinosaur family with a dinosaur dad dropping a beer in surprise, right? But obviously in support of my post. And it went from there, it just took off. And everybody couldn't believe the Department of Homeland Security shared it. They were clearly in favor of it and wanting the nation to get behind them because there was so much arguing going back and forth. Should we support ICE? Should we not? Etc. And then I started getting invited on shows, and I went on some podcasts, and I went on some news shows. I went on Fox News. I went on OAN, and I was doing these interviews, and they're asking me my thoughts on immigration, illegals, deportation. And, I got to tell you, for me, I think America is for Americans. And I think that the American dream should be for Americans. And it shouldn't be something that's given away to people who come into our country that are from another country and almost seemingly to the point where they have a bigger opportunity at the American dream than Americans do. And I was, getting pretty fed up with that, so I started explaining that on some of these interviews. And a couple of them asked about Idaho, and I went and did what I do sometimes, and I named some names. And I named Mayor McLean in Boise as being somebody who certainly doesn't help our immigration situation, providing incentives almost for people who are non-American to come in and to give them things and entice them, and then it just makes more and more people want to come. And I mentioned the name of our governor. And, somebody came up to me the other day and they said, I can tell you're an outsider. I can tell you're not a politician. Because when you're speaking to people, you actually say the name of your competition. And you're not supposed to do that in politics. Well, I am an outsider, right? I'm not a career politician. And so I've been going around saying Governor Little. And so I did it on the news too. I said Governor Little has done very little to help us with our immigration problem. In fact, he's invited more and more non-Americans into this country. And I said this on these news shows, and then 2 days later I got a phone call, not a letter in the mail like almost everybody gets when their business is being audited for sales tax. I got a phone call, and it was from the Idaho Tax Commission, and they said they're putting my businesses under a tax audit. And then I just showed you, I asked him why, and he said it's routine. Well, I said, you're not going to believe this. This is an amazing coincidence, I told the guy on the phone. And after I told him what had happened and what I had just said on national news, he said, if I were you, I'd probably be a little suspicious too. And he said, but I just got the order, and it's a random audit, and so we're going to do this. And I said, no problem. There won't be any problem. But as they say, the punishment is the process, right? Going through the process is the punishment. And it really kind of irked me to once again kind of feel like, man, a patriot who stands up, supports law enforcement, stands up for what's true, stands up for what's right, and we have to be looking over our back or concerned about the government being weaponized against us, potentially. And, maybe there was a phone call made or something, or maybe, this is a coincidence. Maybe one of my many other enemies convinced Idaho Tax Commission to do the audit, and it was just interesting timing. But I kind of felt like, hey, this is not right. And what is something that we, the people, what is something I can do that would help put, these politicians back on their heels and maybe direct some attention to them, right? When you direct attention to people and you expose them, they're more likely, thank you, sir, they're more likely to run away from any evil that they're doing when they know they're being watched. And so what I did in response to this was I announced a $10,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of Mayor McLean in Boise. By the end, you're going to realize I do not like this woman, right? And you're going to hear a few more reasons why. And so what that did is it started another round just a week or two later of newspaper articles and everything. And I had been on all the national news you can think of, but none of the local news had covered anything about my offer at Old State Saloon and the beer and the ice and deportation. None of them had covered it. But when I made this offer about McLean, they all covered it and made her out to be the biggest victim and that I was doing something wrong or whatever, right? Basically, I'm seeking information that's truth, turn it into law enforcement, and if she's arrested for something that she did or whatever, then you can have the reward. It's now up to $30,000, by the way. People have chipped in. But what these things do, and the way that I like to live life and run business, is be a creative marketer, I guess you could say. And the thing about doing creative marketing is that you can accomplish multiple goals at once, okay? You can bring awareness to an issue, and you can make people aware of your business. You can fight culture wars. And ultimately, when you do all that, you're doing good and you're doing good business. You're standing for what's right and true. And that's just something that's just been what I've done ever since, basically publicly, what I've done ever since opening Old State Saloon. So I'm going to back up and tell you a little bit about that right now. It was a little bit over 3 years ago. I went in and I purchased Old State Saloon. And what we did was we decided, hey, most saloons, when you go into a saloon, they kind of, these days, they expect you, and some of them even have a sign that says this, says leave your religion and politics at the door. Just come on in and don't talk about that stuff. Well, we have a letter in our menu, and the very first sentence in the letter says that most saloons say that, but at Old State Saloon, we invite you to bring your religion and politics in. And we invite you to sit down and engage with people in real conversation because we've lost that art. Our country started, and the first Marines were recruited inside saloons. It was a place where people would gather together and listen to somebody talk, and they would ask questions, and they would engage in conversation, and they would all learn something and walk away from that situation with an idea or a plan, or here's what we're going to do, motivated, whatever. But we didn't have these screens that were distracting us, feeding us information, and putting people in a position where they feel like I got something done because I screamed at somebody behind a screen from an anonymous account. What we're doing these days is putting people in a position to do that, and it really kind of creates we've a situation of the lost art of conversation and debate. And these are things that are critically important to a healthy country. And these are reasons why we're losing our country, is because we've lost this. So this is what I wanted to build at Old State Saloon. So we did. And we had events. And we had all kinds of fun events. We brought in some doctors. This was several years back now, 3 years ago. Brought in some doctors, and they talked about vaccines and COVID, and we brought in politicians. We had meet and greets similar to this. We did conspiracy theory trivia night. We've done 4 of those now, and we give away a firearm at each one. We've also done extremely offensive political trivia night. We also give a firearm away on those nights too. And each time we do some of these things, the left, they get blown away, and they get upset, and they yell and scream. But there was this one event that we did that really brought everything to a whole nother level. And that was in May of 2024. My family was together in the kitchen, and we were trying to figure out what were we going to do for our daughter's birthday in June. And we knew that we weren't going to go downtown Boise in June. That's Pride Month, because everything is really, really gay. And we did not want to go celebrate gay. And so I thought, man, where can there be something that doesn't do that and celebrates, the opposite of that, which is perhaps God's design for sexuality? And I really started thinking about that and God's design. And I thought, heterosexuality, it's pretty awesome when it's used in the way that God intended it to be used. So let's celebrate that. Heterosexuality, it's awesome. Heterosexual Awesomeness Month at Old State Saloon. So we did that in June of 2024, and that is the first time that things really took off, okay? And it went around the world, and we had a massive amount of haters that demanded an apology. And we had the Idaho statesman calling me a bigot in an opinion piece. And then I had all of the normal, rational, ethical, biblical conservatives who really rallied behind me and supported me. And they said, this is amazing. We want to celebrate this. You guys can do what you want to do, but we want to celebrate and support this. And for that whole month, that warring happened, and I was invited on all kinds of talk shows and podcasts and news. And it was a time where we ended up having a lot of people follow us. And I got a lot of letters and messages, sometimes thousands a day. And the messages from the left were very evil. They were dark, almost demonic, you could say. And they were basically trying to get me to a point that I would give up. And that's their strategy. That's what they do. And they put pressure on you until you give up. But I would not give up. Instead, I pushed harder. And I gave away free beer for men on Mondays, and I called it Beer for Breeders. And we gave certain discounts to the ladies on Tuesdays, and we gave discounts to couples, heterosexual couples, on Wednesdays. And every time they did more, I did more. I think this is the world we need in order to stop the left from doing all the evil that they're doing. We need more people to stand up and say enough is enough. We're done. So things progressed on. I was censored. I lost social media accounts simply for speaking truth. I had people posting the most grotesque things and sending the most disgusting things and reviews that you could ever imagine. My life was threatened numerous times. They threatened to burn down the building numerous times. They threatened to do horrific things to my family in front of me. And it really opened up my eyes to something that I had never realized before, because every time in my life before where I had thought about LGBTQ or pride or anything, it was always like, okay, well, it's free country, you're an adult, do what you want to do. I'm doing, this is my life. I'm going to live this way. You can do what you want to do. And it had always been, explained to me that the mission of Pride movement, LGBTQ, was there for awareness and to help protect, two gay people walking down the street from being attacked or whatever. That's fine. I don't think anybody should be attacked, for being gay or anything like that. But what I came to learn as I'm doing research is that's not the mission. That is not the mission of the LGBTQ pride agenda. I will pause here and I will say, there are a lot of very much more normal people in that movement who called me and were on my side big time, okay, because they were disgusted by what the depths of evil that the Pride movement has gone to. And where I'm going with this is the massive multi-billion-dollar effort to try to convince children that a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy. And that effort was definitely financed with our tax dollars and pushed out through our country at many events across the country, through NGOs, through USAID. And that's why we had such a big, massive push for all this happening. And Hollywood stars got into it. There was money driving all of this. And they wanted to do what would be the most offensive to a good God and creator, which would be to pervert his creation to the point that a male would be a female and a female would be a male. And so that's what I learned, and I started speaking about it. And they hated that. I said, no, you guys aren't innocently trying to protect two gay people walking down the street. You are trying to tell children to get a surgery to chop off their body parts. That is the most evil, one of the most evil things I can think of. And so I kind of went on I started speaking out about that, and I got a lot more enemies, and that's when, things started disappearing, like my Facebook page with 15,000 followers disappeared. All of the musicians that would play at Old State Saloon disappeared. They wouldn't play there anymore. Every time somebody went to play, all of the left would attack them and call them a bigot for showing up at Old State Saloon or even saying that they would. And so they started to do everything that they could, and I'm not going to say all the things they did because I don't want to give anybody ideas, to attack my businesses that I had. And so we had to push through that, and it was difficult at times. We had difficulties with people who were on the left, obviously, but I also had difficulties because there was a lot of attention coming our way. I had difficulties with people on the right who were Christian, who were telling me that I needed to be more supportive of the LGBTQ movement, and that I shouldn't own a bar where there's alcohol served, even though Jesus turned water into wine. But I got a lot of those messages, and so it was a difficult time. Okay, so we make it through that. There's a couple years, and a lot of during that period of time, I was like, why am I doing this? Sometimes I would stop and say, why am I doing this? But yet, day after day, I'd wake up and I would just get back in the fight and keep going. And we got a lot of people that were following and supportive along the way. So we get back to this November situation, and that's when I realized, when I saw that nobody was running against Governor Little, and I had gotten to the point that I was very disappointed with the lack of populist type of governorship, if you will, a governor that gets the people very involved, which is the way our government should be. And it was sad to me to see what appeared to be a governor's office that answered more to big something, big ag, big dairy, big pharma, big whatever, and not answering to the people. And so that's when I started praying that direction. I started walking that way. Well, we get into December. I did the reward thing. Then I made papers again. And then Nick Shirley did his thing. Do you guys know who Nick Shirley is? Yes, raise your hand. Good. Yeah, we should clap for him. And so he's really exposing California right now, but obviously we know he got started in Minneapolis. And what I saw from him was inspiring. And I went out and attempted to do some of the same things in Idaho. And I had a few friends digging up some information, and they were feeding me the information about addresses and what was supposed to be going on there. And so I went to 25-ish daycares, or what was supposed to be daycares, and I found a lot of fraud. I filmed it all, and I put it out. I edited it. We edited it together. We put it out online, and people watched it and shared it. And I would go up. I'd knock on the door. Some of them were regular houses. Some of them were more like businesses. And I saw everything from absolutely no daycare and no sign of one, and yet there was an inspection like 2 weeks ago, and they passed. So that was weird. I saw expensive cars in people's driveways and really no sign of any kids anywhere. I had conversations with several people who were willing to talk, and they told me that even though they only had one child today, they're paid for 12 kids there. And then they got nervous and said, well, it's because it's a holiday, so there'll be more kids next week. So I went back the next week, and there weren't any more kids there. I went to about 25 of these places, recorded all of everything going on, and I realized there is so much fraud going on in Idaho. And it's not just in Minneapolis, and it's not just in California. It's across our whole country. It's been going on for a long time. And the hardworking conservative people in our country that probably assume the best out of other people have been not paying attention. Meanwhile, they're taking our tax dollars, further putting us in debt, further enslaving us to debt, and they're giving their tax dollars and incentivizing people who are not Americans to come into our country. I started researching all this and looking at it and realizing I was just scratching the surface of all this. And I thought, man, I'm going to give the governor's office a chance to help clarify this to the people. So I wrote a letter. And in that letter, I said, the people of Idaho, sir, they're very, very concerned about NGOs and money and fraud and the Department of Health and Welfare with a $6.5 billion budget in Idaho. And we have a list of concerns and things that I'm seeing and that I've witnessed so far, and we would like to invite you to come to something exactly like this. A town hall. Would you please come to a town hall? I'll pay for it to be filmed and broadcast out, and we can just have the people ask you some questions so you can help clarify it and help answer it and help us understand that there's not fraud happening, or if there is, that you're on top of it and you will investigate it and you're going to take care of it because you're our governor. And so I sent that to him and emailed it to him, and I didn't get a quick response, so I printed it out 3 or 4 days later, and I drove and parked in front of the Capitol building, and I got out, and we filmed this too. And I walked into his office. I handed the letter to his secretary, and I said, this is a letter for the governor, and it's a request for him to engage with the people in a town hall so we can ask him some questions about different things. And she said, oh, yeah, we got your email, and I'm sure you'll get a response to this. And I said, thank you so much. And I left, and I did not get an answer. Just got completely ignored. And it was right about that time when I realized how much fraud is going on in Idaho, how bloated our government is, how much corruption's going on, and we're being completely ignored from the top office in the state. And you know who's not holding him accountable either? Our media. We're supposed to have a free media that goes out and asks questions, and it's very similar to a Trump situation, except we're Idaho, and it's a bit smaller, right? But I start looking back and I start thinking, has the media really ever challenged our governor with any tough questions? And I couldn't think of one. And so you have to wonder why a mainstream media, a leftist mainstream media owned by the people who own all of the other leftist mainstream medias in our country, why would a leftist mainstream media not challenge a Republican governor? Because in the state of Idaho, a red state, some people say the reddest state in the country, Governor Little is the best that a leftist can hope for in the state of Idaho. And it is sad. And so that's the point where I thought, man, I really think I need to do this. And that day, my wife, she saw me and she said, I was praying again today, and suddenly God put it on my heart that this is what you need to do. And so the timing was really kind of perfect as far as that goes. And I said, I feel pretty content. I need to do this too. And so from that day, we marched forward. I have my wife, her name's Sarah. We've been married 23 years. We have 6 children, 12 to 21. And you better believe it has to be it's a difficult decision to decide if you're going to bring your family into a governor's race, right? But we felt very certain about it, and we still do. And my full family is gung ho. And so here we are, and we announced that, and it's been an amazing campaign so far, and I am really, really eager to see what God has planned for it. I want you to know I'm the type of person who wakes up every day and I pray to God, Lord, what would you have me do today for your glory? And so if you want a governor like that, that's what I do. And that will be the basis for decisions that I make, will be that. And I truly love Idaho, and serving the Idaho people, the people of Idaho. It would seem like it would be a joy to me. My goal would be to make it the most populous governorship anybody's ever witnessed, where you have a governor who, in the Lincoln Auditorium once a month, would invite the public to come to the Capitol and sit and ask questions, just like we're going to do today. And that is, to me, the ultimate transparency, is the more you engage and talk with the people about the things that are going on in Idaho, the more transparent it is, which means less evil can happen in the dark corners and back offices and things like that. That would be my intent. For those of you who live far away from the Lincoln Auditorium, don't worry, the plan is also to travel around and set up events at different places around the state as well. So doing that, doing a podcast that I would intend to do where we bring people in to talk about certain issues, hot topics. I would want everybody to know the details of a deal from some social media company coming in that's going to put a whole bunch of servers that requires a ton of our water and energy. I would want everybody to know about all those deals before they're made. I want it all to be transparent so that the people can keep an eye easily on the government and hold the government accountable. That if we have that attitude in everything that we do, we will see the evil and corruption will disappear. But the idea would be bring the people in mass numbers from this direction, and then from the top office, push down this way, and we'll shine a light on it all. And we'll build it back up. What we're going to do is speak truth. When you speak truth, this is what I've learned. When you speak truth, it causes some division, and it can cause destruction. The more evil in the place you're in, if you speak truth, the more damage it's going to cause. But then you can rebuild it on top of a truth foundation, and things would be much better from there. And the ultimate example is in the New Testament. Jesus says, he didn't come for peace. Don't think I came for peace. I actually came to divide, because I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and the truth divides. When people are doing evil things and there's secrecy happening, the truth will divide people. He said mother will be divided against daughter, and father and son, and the other examples that he said about families being split apart. But that is something, unfortunately, that we as a people need to get to this point where we say, hey, I am way less concerned about any damage that might be caused here and embarrassment to whoever and jail time or whatever is going to happen to certain people. I'm way less concerned about that damage than I am just about speaking truth and doing the right thing. So that's the intention. I want to tell you a little bit about my background so you're aware, and then we can have some questions. And for the questions, I want to encourage you, don't be embarrassed. Ask whatever you want. I'm extremely transparent. You can ask me personal questions if you want, and I'll answer as many as we can, as long as people are here. So let's see. I grew up in a family, a law enforcement family. My father, 40-year police officer for Los Angeles Police Department. Sometimes I get a little bit choked up when I talk about family, so if I do, just start clapping and it'll be okay. But I grew up, my parents loved each other. I got to see that example in my life, and I knew that was something that I wanted. I only had one sister, and I knew I wanted to get married and just have kids. I didn't know how many, I just wanted to start having kids. And so when I was a young police officer, I went into a diner, and I was working on duty in uniform, and I met another officer there. And my wife, my future wife, was there, and she was a server at the diner. And we met. I came back in a week later. And the second time I came back in, I got her number. We went out on a date. We were engaged 2 months later. We were married 4 months after that. Now 23 years and 6 children. And when we sat down on our first date, I said to her, look, we can just have fun. And if this isn't the right thing for you and you're not thinking what I'm thinking, no problem. We'll just have fun. We can be friends. But I don't want to go on another date if you're not the type of person who loves the Lord and wants to get married. Because I don't want to. I'm not dating around. I'm not fooling around. These are my objectives. If you're on that path, I would love to continue dating you. And she said, I'm on that path. In her cute way of saying it. And so we have supportive families. She had a similar situation with her family, with parents that are committed and love each other, and they supported us, and we got married and quickly, which was awesome, and got started on our lives together. I was a police officer for 15 years for Newport Beach Police Department, and in that, I got to see so much and learn so much about humanity, about evil, about righteousness as well. And my favorite stories about police work are the ones where I was able to make a difference in people's lives. And some of them, it's not the simple show up and save someone's life. It's actually, they turned out, most of the time, it was a very difficult decision that I had to make. And then I found out later that somebody's life was basically changed or saved because of it. And those were my favorite times. But when I was a young police officer, I realized that God wired me to be very entrepreneurial. And so I started some businesses, and I got into check. There we go. This one's working now. All right, where was I?
Try it now.
Test. All right.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Don't touch that.
So I realized God wired me to be very entrepreneurial, and I started some businesses mainly related to real estate and marketing. And those were growing while I was a police officer. When I was a police officer, I tried entrepreneurialism by bringing new ideas to the department. And what I learned is that the government is not interested in new ideas and entrepreneurialism, especially from a know-it-all younger police officer that hasn't been around very long. So that's why I started dedicating some time to building some different companies. And at one point, I had a luxury marketing company, international luxury marketing company, and I had 25 full-time employees. And I was still a full-time police officer at the same time. And my wife, she said, "Do you think you could choose a career? That would be great. Because we have 6 children, and you have 25 employees over here, and you're working full-time over here." And I said, yeah, I will do that. So I made the very difficult decision of leaving a career that I truly loved, police work, and leaving the for sure paycheck and leaving the for sure benefits and the retirement and everything. And I went and continued on with this vision of growing this company. Well, less than 2 years later, that company failed due to bad timing and a poor fluctuation in world currencies with the yen versus the dollar. And due to that, a whole buyer pool stopped buying in this market that I was doing marketing and selling for, and I lost a $12 million contract. And I found myself having to lay off the 25 people. And when I did that, I also had to liquidate my assets, my business assets, so I could pay off business debt. And I got it all paid off. And I was right back to zero again. And I thought, man, okay, I'm going to rebuild something. And I'm thinking about rebuilding a company in California. And it made me depressed because California sucks. The politics are horrible. There's way too many people. Everything's far too expensive. There's lack of liberty and lack of freedom. They were starting to talk about forcing vaccinations on children, which I was not about ready to let happen. And so it's a bit of a story, but we researched, and ultimately through prayer and very, very clear direction from God, it was clear that we were going to move to Idaho. And we moved here in the beginning of 2018. And so if you do the math, that's 8 years. 8 years I've been here, and there are some people who tell me, you have no right to try to be a governor of Idaho if you've only been here 8 years. You need to be here at least 3 generations. And I would point to the current governor's office and say, your 3-generational governor is doing a very bad service to Idahoans. He's ignoring them. He's not serving them. So going back, I truly love this state. I love the people, even the people who hate me. I love them, and I show up, and I actually engage in conversation with them, and I actually look them in the eye, and I tell them I love you. And I've put numerous videos of that out online as well. I want what's best for here, for our state, and I'm just not seeing it. It's getting worse, and it's getting a lot worse. And we are very, very close as a country and as a state to losing everything that we were given. And we should feel partially responsible for this, for being apathetic and a bit cowardly and shirking our responsibility and our obligation to be good stewards of the amazing form of government that we've been given. I really, from the bottom of my heart, want to solve that problem and get the people majorly involved in our government. And if they are, we wouldn't have 7 immigration bills that are basically dying right now, because if we had thousands of people showing up at the Capitol building, they wouldn't do it. First of all, if we had that kind of engagement, we wouldn't have the type of people who are killing bills in there right now. We'd have the right kind of people in there. But that would be the goal, my number one goal, and that will fix so many of the other questions and policy things that we'll talk about. A lot of those problems are going to be fixed when we get the people truly involved in our government. And that's like my number one goal. Other things, let's see. So just so you know, and I hate doing this, but I did very well in school. I had a 4.2 grade point average in high school, and I went to the United States Naval Academy with congressional nominations. But I only stayed 1 semester in the Naval Academy. It was a difficult phone call to my parents, but I told them, I know it's very, very clear to me. I got my grades. I finished plebe summer. It's the hardest period of time for the whole thing. I got done with it because I knew I wanted to get done with the hardest part. And then I said, I know for sure that this is not for me. And my parents supported me. I went home. I finished college in 3.5 years, and then I became a police officer that I told you about. So that's kind of my history. That's kind of where I'm at with my businesses right now. So when I moved to Idaho, I'm sorry for jumping around, but when I moved to Idaho, I got into real estate. I worked really hard. I sold homes, and I invested into some businesses that had real estate with it, including a wedding venue and also what has turned out to be Old State Saloon. Old State Saloon, I never thought I'd buy a bar, okay? But I had a wedding venue. I brought my marketing in, and we booked a lot more weddings. And the way that you serve alcohol at a wedding is a bar in a county area, because you can't get a liquor license. So you have a bar, get a one-day permit from the county, and you come and set up and serve each event on a permit from the county. And so I thought, wow, I've just booked 70 weddings for next year. I need to go out and buy a bar. So it's my bar that gets the one-day permit and comes and does that. And you laugh because you think of the obvious reason, there's more profitability, and that is true. That's one of the reasons why I did that. But also I did it because of my experience of being a police officer and seeing the damages that alcohol can cause when it's not managed properly. So I know my staff. I can trust my staff to do that when they're serving. That's one reason. And then also the service level. I didn't want my venue to have negative reviews because another outside bar is coming in and they're not professional in the way that they're doing their services. So those are the reasons why I decided to go out and buy a bar. And I started close to home. And the one that I ended up buying, I walked in, I talked to Bill. I said, are you interested in selling? He said, yes. We made a deal on a napkin and closed a month later. And it turned out to be in the Orville Jackson's building in Eagle, built in 1906, and has a tremendous amount of amazing history. And many, many people come in all the time to tell me about it. There's an argument about whether or not there's a basement in the building from many, many years ago, and we still don't know whether it's true or not. But it's been a joy to own it. It's been a joy to see it develop. We've turned it into a restaurant at this point. We have kids that all ages are allowed to come in until 8 p.m. And the joy that I get, the happiest time that I get about being the owner of Old State Saloon is when I look across the room and there's 2 people or 3 people or a group of people that are engaging in that kind of conversation that I told you about earlier. They're looking each other in the eye. They're not distracted by screens, football games, whatever. They're learning about each other, learning about their likes and differences. They're talking, and I hear them, they're talking about topics that people don't talk about in other places. And I love that because that reminds me of our founding fathers and the way our country got started. So I would hope some of that resonates with you. I'm asking for your support, and I promise you I will be the most communicative governor that Idaho has seen, and I want people around the country to look to Idaho and say, that's the way right there that governing should be done. And that's the governor I want to be. Thank you. So I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has.
If you're physically disabled and can't go up there, then raise your hand and I'll bring you the microphone.
The Revolutionary War was actually, the plans for that were hatched in a bar, or tavern. So I think you got a good start. In your search for fraud in Boise, did you happen to look into the refugee community? And did you look into the NGOs that are bringing refugees into our state?
Yes. The friends that I had that were doing research, they saved me a lot of time because I didn't have to do the research. And we basically targeted names that when you read them, they would appear to be that, okay? So a refugee, Somalian names, basically. So I went to those specifically because they're more likely, based off what we learned from Minneapolis, they're more likely to have fraud involved with them, and boy, oh boy, was there plenty of fraud. I told you that my competitor, the person I'm running against, we don't say his name, right? That's not professional. He's welcoming people who are not American to Idaho. I want to tell you specifically how that's happening. I don't think I mentioned this yet. Executive Order 13888. Does anybody know what that is? No, it's not that one. So Executive Order 13888, 2019, it was September. President Trump issued executive order, and he said that if any further relocation refugees into any states required a letter from both the governor and the chief executive of the city or county that the refugees were going to go to. And the letter needed to say that they were aware of Executive Order 13888 and that they were in favor of the refugees coming. Okay, so Governor Little wrote 2 of these letters in 2019 in favor of 13888, which includes language that says we are eager and equipped to take on more refugees. And he did it in 2 counties, Twin Falls and Ada County. And after that point in time, we continue to see an increase based off of people who have told me and observations. Now, I'm not giving you any like data points here, but based off of observations, people saw an increase during the COVID years of busloads and busloads and busloads of people arriving who were not Americans into Idaho. And it's because of that. What I find interesting, there's a lot of things I really admire about Trump. His populism, I love it. I love how he calls people out by name. I will do that too. And you guys will probably laugh in your houses as you read it someday. But we're going to call people out when they do evil things. And that's the way Trump does it too. But with this order, Executive Order 13888, what I think he was doing, I have a feeling he knew his second term was not going to happen, even though he was going to win the election, but not actually be the president. And then what he wanted to do was put the governors in a situation where they would have to sign their name, and actually he'll have proof later that these governors welcomed more of these refugees in. Well, the plan to bring more refugees in and to open up borders is essentially a plan to bring in a foreign army into our country that is now living amongst us. And it's scary when you really start sitting down thinking about it, and the amount of money that we're spending on providing for this foreign army that is now amongst us. Does that mean that every illegal immigrant is somebody who hates this country? Certainly not. And I know a lot of them that seem like wonderful, hardworking people. But it wasn't us that got us to this situation. But the right thing to do right now to fix this situation is to deport all of them. We build our country back up into a strong country, and then we come up with a reasonable set of rules after we're strong and we're taking care of all of our own people, especially our veterans, and we're building wealth and leading the world. Then we can come up with a set of rules for people who want to come to America and make it even better than it is, because they're going to bring something to make it better, not people who are going to come with their hand out because some business opportunity landed in their lap. That's what we need. I have no idea what the original question was, but
What would you say is your top 3 platform items? So succinctly.
So top 3 would be getting rid of corruption. So exposing corruption in the government, immigration, and then from there, it's like a tie between a few, but parental rights is going to be up there. Cutting down expenses of the government. We've basically got ourselves in a position where all of this money came in during COVID. The money had strings attached. You have to create this agency and this service, and that money will run out, and then we Idahoans are going to have to figure out how to keep paying for that, because it's not going to continue on forever. It's like the drug dealer on the playground that's giving away free drugs, gets people addicted, and then eventually they're going to have to start paying. That's the way it went. It was always like, oh, well, it's free money from the government, we might as well take it. It would be stupid not to. Well, it's just a big plan to basically redistribute our wealth later on and put us in a position where the thumb is on us from people who want us to be indebted to them so that they can control us, and we're not truly free people. So bloated government because of what happened, parental rights, and then the first 2 things, which were corruption in the government, immigration.
Come on, there's got to be more questions.
So I'll talk a little bit about parental rights. So I have some experience. My family adopted. We went through foster care program in Anaheim, and at this point we had 4 children, and my wife and I we were like, well, if we add one more child, it's only a 20% increase in children, and it's really not that hard to do when you have 4 children under, I think, 7. So adding one more to the mix wouldn't be too difficult. And we went through all the classes and everything and got ready. And they called us and they said, we have a 5-day-old who's been taken from his mother at the hospital. It'll most likely turn into an adoption case. She's a drug user and she's had several children taken from her. He's Native American and Mexican. And we're like, yes, of course. So we went down and we fostered for him. And I went through a couple years of visitations with him and learning about the foster care system, which is a total disaster, not just in the state we were in, but pretty much every foster care experience I hear from people in different states is not good. And that's also something that I would like to figure out and solve that problem. But it got me thinking about parental rights and all those types of things, and going through and having the government be involved in family decisions and education and everything. And I really just got to the point where I'm like, I want the government as minimally involved as possible in this, because this really should be the responsibility of what hopefully is a healthy family to decide these things for their family's future.
I'm Ernie Tate. It's not working? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, my question is, in Idaho Falls, and I assume, and I don't do as much traveling through the state as what you probably do, or down around Ada County. Everywhere you look, they're building high-rise, which is 3-story apartment buildings. Everywhere. If there's a 20 square foot lot available, they'll figure out how to put an apartment. You know, what'd she say? Oh, anyway, how is the government involved in this? I mean, somebody's got to be involved in this, and what are they planning on filling up these things with? They seem to be filling them up, but I just can't imagine, and I know there's a lot of people moving in from California, Oregon, and Washington, but I don't think that that's what's filling up these apartment buildings. I'm trying to figure out what's going on and how much the government's actually involved in that. There's got to be some connection.
I agree with you. I don't know all the details, but it seems something smells not right about the whole situation. I know there's a lot of refugees coming in. I know there's money attached to them. And where all that money goes, some of it goes directly to help them. Some of it continues to help them. We have medical budgets and all kinds of things for refugees that come in. And ultimately, that falls on our shoulders. The refugees come in and they are competition for work and labor, and typically work at lower wages. And so I think all of that needs to come to an end. I even doubt, and I don't understand, and I would like to see what the process is for classifying them as refugees. Because a refugee is supposed to be somebody who's facing severe persecution wherever they're coming from. And I just don't trust our government enough to say that, especially during the Biden administration, that they were properly vetting or interviewing or determining if somebody is a true refugee and bringing them from another country to our country and handing them, in some instances, hundreds of thousands of dollars for them to build a business. It's just mind-blowing what's being exposed. And so you ask, how are they filling these buildings? Well, some of it is certainly that. I mean, I've had personal experiences of selling something on Facebook Marketplace where the person purchasing it was a refugee, and they had a wallet full of crisp $100 bills. And you just start putting all of these observations together, and you just start, it's like, what is going on here, And how are all these places going up and being built? And I know there's people, like you said, coming from California, Oregon, Washington, but there's also all these people coming from other countries too. So what I'm going to do is help in one way and not in another, and I'll explain. I'm going to help by stopping all of the unnecessary refugees coming in here. I think we could stop all of it. I think we need to have these bills be passed. One of them that would have a major impact would be to make it illegal on a state level for an employer to hire an illegal, and to make it have some teeth with some penalty, okay? And my goal would be to find the first person that's doing that after a fair period of time for adjustment, and have them prosecuted and exposed. And we can show we're serious about this. And when employers stop employing, the illegals will leave. I'm putting out a video soon. I went around with a friend of mine and we filmed, and I walked up to work sites, and I interviewed some construction workers. And you'll see this if you follow me online. We'll probably put it out in the next week or two. And I would ask them about their work and where they're from and everything. And I am not shy just to ask questions. I'm not afraid of confrontation. I think it's something you learn when you're a police officer and you talk to so many people every day. And I just flat out asked them, are you illegal? And some of them said yes. And some of them said, I really rather not answer that question, which made you understand what the answer was. And I asked him, what would happen if there was a law that was passed? Meanwhile, that week that I was doing this, they were killing the actual law that was trying to be passed to do this. What would happen if a law was passed where your employer is no longer allowed to employ illegals? And the person who declined to answer, whether he was an American or illegal or had papers, said, well, I would have to go back to my country or to California. That one law will make a huge difference. And so getting the people involved, getting these things passed, not letting legislatures bury things, having a governor that's making people aware of the situation, getting those things done, getting the right laws in place, they will go, because there's not going to be freebies and jobs and everything for them here. And so they'll leave. That does not solve our nation's problem. Our nation will have to have some sort of federal force that continues to grow, ICE, that continues to grow to a point where it can properly deport enough people. But it will solve our state's problem. Now, the other thing that you asked was people from California, Oregon, and Washington coming here. Unfortunately, if I'm honest, I will probably make that situation worse, because as your governor, people from California, Oregon, and Washington are even more going to want to come to Idaho because it's going to be so awesome here. It's going to be conservative, and we're going to stand on principles, and we're going to have people involved in our government, and things are going to be rocking in a good way. And our economy is going to be raging, and people are going to be happy, and they're going to spread the word, and unfortunately more people are going to want to come here. So how do we deal with that? My preference is not to go up. If you're going to expand and build, and we will have to expand and build if we're awesome, and we're going to be, we build out. I prefer to build out rather than up. You look at the way of the world and cities, and the more you can get the maximum amount of people in one spot, that means a very few amount of people can control a large amount of people because of the geographical limitations and restrictions they can put on them in a big city. I don't like control. I'm a freedom and liberty guy. And so my preference would be, as much as possible, to build out way before we would build up. And any influence I can have in that, which some instances there would be some, and some instances there's just not much that the governor has to do with that. But any influence I would have would be to help support that kind of growth.
So, Mark, I really appreciate your courage in running for office. You know, I was pretty well associated with Ammon Bundy, who they financially destroyed in a very aggressive, unfair lawsuit, in my opinion. I understand we do have 17 candidates running for governor this year. I understand you are also very high in the polls in challenging Little. Do you think these 17 candidates running for governor are part of a plan to dilute your influence?
I would assume so. I think that's probably the case. It's called flooding the field. Well, it's not quite that bad, though. And so as we look to May 19th, that's our Republican primary. And essentially, as far as the Republican primary goes, I believe we have 7, somewhere around there. And so I look at that, and I've been watching, and I don't see anybody in that 7 who has a real chance of making it other than my competition and myself. Myself, because of the couple years and the big following and the name recognition that we have as a result of standing for what's right and true and people appreciating that, and Governor Little, because he's currently in the office. But once we get past that and we win on May 19th, then we go to November. And in November, so let's say there's 8 left. Well, that'll be reduced down too, because there'll only be 1 Democrat, one or 2 independents. So there's probably going to be, realistically, in November, there'll be 4-ish. And at that point in time, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that the Republican's going to win in November. So the real race is between the 7 or so people who are on the ballot on May 19th. And I just don't see anybody having a chance other than myself and Governor Little. Flooding the field is a tactic. I've been told, I've been threatened. I got phone calls before I announced. The threats were real. They were, you should not run. You're putting your life in jeopardy, your family's life in jeopardy. They're going to ruin your name. They're going to bankrupt you. They're going to come up with some charges, whatever. I talked to Ammon Bundy. I called him, and he was a very fine gent to spend time with me talking, and he expressed that he hoped I do very well, and I appreciate that, and he gave me some thoughts and pointers, and I'll be following up with him, and he sent me or got me to the point where I could get some information that would be helpful for my campaign, and I really appreciate his kindness and his time. But I appreciate you bringing him up.
Mark for Idaho. That's our battle cry. Way to go.
Hi. I just want to thank you for taking time to come and address Idaho Falls residents. This is kind of off the wall question a little bit. Mountain Home area, Qatar. There are people coming over and setting up training or whatever. How do you feel about having that closeness with the Islam people here in Idaho? I mean, theology-wise or something, are you aware? Do you know where it's at? Kind of lost track with everything going on over in Iran. And then the water issue. You know, we're building up. And how do you feel about the water issue here? Okay, I'll let you go. Thank you.
Well, both of those things we could discuss for a long, long time. Qatar building a base on our base, or not building a base, building their area on our base. It first came out and a lot of people were talking about Qatar building a base in Idaho is the way that it started spreading, and that is not the case. Just to be clear, that is not happening. We have given them permission under our supervision and our authority and under our rules and regulations to build a certain something, whatever they're building, training force or whatever, on our base. Okay, so they don't get their own base. We do, however, get our own base in Qatar. And we do have our own bases in other countries around the globe. There are other countries who train here in the United States. There are other countries that are present on our other bases. I looked into all that. That's all true. So how do I feel about Qatar building something on our base? It's concerning. It is concerning, but the fact that it's not them being solo, being able to make decisions on our soil, I guess would bring some comfort to that. A lot of the way we live life as Americans, a lot of it has to be with trust and hope in our leaders. We definitely need to get way more involved. But, you know, at some point in time, it's like decision was made, and my hope is that it's a good decision. I don't have all the details. I wasn't sitting in all the meetings. I can't possibly know. But it's not as scary as some people made it seem. But yet it shouldn't be just dismissed as nothing to not be worried about. Now, you asked another question about Muslim, and I'll answer that too. Islam, Muslims and Islam, Sharia law, and a theocracy involving the tenets of Sharia law does not fit with the United States of America. And I am very much against that. So I will probably be that person as governor who speaks out loudly against that. I will not shy away from that and just fly under the radar, not making any waves so nobody asks me any questions. That's not going to be my style. So I will address that. Regarding water, this is something that I think that our resources are abundant in Idaho. My suspicion is that water is a little bit more abundant than we're let on to believe, and that it just needs to be properly managed. People who get put in powerful positions like to control people by saying there's a lack of something, and that's not the way I see things. I see an opportunity in Idaho as we sit on, well, there's rumors or talk of potentially trillions of dollars worth of resources in our state, whether it's precious metals or gems or thorium or super fuels, the ability to build nuclear power reactors and things because of the resources in our state. Those things are extremely valuable. And we've been told that we need to limit our responsible mining and gathering of those resources and using them, because that's just the limitations and things that we do in the United States. And it's also the same type of people that says that we can't afford to do manufacturing in this country. And I think all that's ridiculous. We need to figure out how to do everything here in the United States. So we're relying on ourselves to provide everything. And we're not relying on a foreign country and people that want to control us and put us under a system of slavery because of taxation where it's all based off of nonsense and lies.
Hi. I might throw you for a little loop. I also have adopted three kiddos, me and my wife. They were my niece's kids. And she was a drug addict, bad meth head. Two different dads. Both dads ended up were in prison when we got the kids. We took them as guardianship first. And as guardianship, of course, you don't get any help whatsoever. We had two kids of our own, but there was an age gap in the three we took. We got one from the hospital also. All three of them were addicted, meth heads. And in the state of Idaho, drugs is pretty prevalent. And at the prison system, our prisons are full, and it's just a revolving door. Both of those dads, one dad, his top out date was 2032, but he got out twice. He's out right now again because the prisons are full. And after a short period of time, they kick him out. the parole board just kicks them out because they got to open up space. We are paying the state of Texas to house prisoners right now. And so for me, I was a drug addict for 27 years. I've been clean 22 now. Made a complete change, right? But I would like to see, some better drug reform. We've put one program together in the state, around the country since I was in school, and that's the DARE program. It's for 6th grade. It's after 6th grade, the kids don't ever hear about it again. It's for one trimester for like 4 weeks. That's it. And so the kids that are seniors right now, fentanyl was not a big deal when they were in 6th grade, doing the DARE program. And I would like to see it expand where they're doing, where they get together at the school and do assemblies, update, go to the high school, do updates. I'd like to see us get drug dogs in the schools, not just have a resource officer, but let's make him a canine officer. And if there's a school shooting, which we've had up in Rigby, he could let that dog go, follow the dog, and let the dog be he'll find the target. I would like to see prison reform. Right now at the prisons, they don't reform. They had programs, but they don't. Everything they have is old, used, junky stuff. Our prison system is backwards. Our sentencing is backwards. We have a drug court. We have a rider system. They just keep slapping the hands until you become a career criminal. That's what happened to me. And I did over 5 years locked up. And now, I work at the INL. I have a clearance. I had to go do a two-hour interrogation. But our system right now creates career criminals. They slap hands. The oldest boy that I adopted, when he got his license, gave him a vehicle, he totaled it 5 days. Wrecked, destroyed a fence. They put him on what's called a diversion program. Which to me was a complete joke. He was in it for 3 months. They kick him out. It doesn't go on his record. He's not held accountable. And he's becoming a career criminal, following in his mom and his dad's footsteps. And I think, we are losing our state. If marijuana is made legal in this state, we will lose our state. Marijuana is not the gateway drug like everybody says it is. It's nicotine. And if you go to the middle schools, everywhere, kids are vaping. And they also have what's called carts, which is weed. And it's prevalent in the high schools, in the middle schools. And I want to know, what your ideas are on drug reform and prison reform.
All right. So just to be clear, I'm against legalization of marijuana. I'm against the decriminalization of marijuana. I have researched and I have heard the arguments for it. Some of them cause a moment of recognizing, yes, I believe there actually is some value to what you're saying there. There is some significant value to the way that this plant can be used. However, there's no doubt in my mind that if we were to do that and legalize marijuana, we would have far more teenagers that were using marijuana. Marijuana today is really messing with people's minds and causing permanent damage, especially in people with they're still developing. And that will put them on a path of psychosis throughout their whole life, and they'll end up having to be a patient of Big Pharma their whole life. Mental illness, and we don't want to create that. So your question is, we unfortunately, we live in a world that is the result of many decades of a lot of things happening to create the situation we're in. one of which is a church coming under the deception that they are not to get involved with the affairs of the world. I think that's horrible. I think the church should wake up and be extremely involved in the affairs of the world. They should be there to confront evil and shine light and expose it and expose corruption. And that needs to come from the leadership. And if it's not coming from the leadership, then the people of the church need to rise up and do something about it. But it's a very complicated situation. And I would say that if we shift back to a focus in our community and in our world of focusing on traditional family values, the traditional family unit and how important that unit is to be strong and stay together, that's a long-term solution to your problem. Getting the church to recognize that political battles and culture wars is the battle of good and evil, and with the church saying, we're just going to be over here in our bubble, that's essentially saying, Satan, do whatever you want. And that just can't happen. That has to stop. So I would say, to answer your question, wake up the church, return to biblical values, traditional family values, lift that up as something that's excellent, and to aspire to that to our children, not to bring them up in a world where we expect to have somebody singing a halftime show in another language about having rampant sex with everybody, and that would be a shock that would be in our world, and to be disgusted about something like that. And instead, we live in a world where that's supposed to be glorified and celebrated. But that's the shift that we have to make, and I do think that we're at that point where it's either going to happen or it's just going to be a mess. Short term, I mean, we do have some problems. I think that if we're able to cut massively in some areas of our government, I do think potentially considering increasing availability for housing people so that we can appropriately issue penalties when they should be issued, especially to the people who are the source of the victim or the source of the provision of drugs and things like that. And we should really look into that. It's also going to help solve the problem when we focus on immigration and deportation, and we have less congestion and less people in one area, less people who are trained to go and say, give me my free thing so that I can go get enjoyment in the world, okay? If you work hard for something and then you treat your family to enjoyment, there's a pride and there's a reward for that is inexplicable compared to getting free money and going to get enjoyment. This is something that's evil over here, but if you work hard to provide it for your family, that is something that is so God-honoring and amazing, and that's what we should be encouraging our children to think about doing. Not the freebies, not the instant fame, not the easy money, not the fortune, etc., but that's the world that's kind of being pushed out there, is that you take from these people's taxes and you just give it to these people over here. All of that needs to be changed. And it's nothing that we can solve overnight. The quickest way to solve all these problems, if there was some massive change with the way that the church, and I'm talking about the greater church, if the church would wake up and start to get massively involved, all this stuff would change very quickly.
I have one more question. I previously ran for county commissioner over in Butte County twice. Didn't get elected. Had some great ideas. I realized my problem was trying to get elected was getting the word out and the army of people that I would have needed to get elected. Right now I'm currently supporting my daughter. She's the assessor for Jefferson County right now, Jessica Roach. She's up for re-election. She's got somebody running against her. And another young man that's running against Jim Risch, Josh Roy, trying to help them both. And I'm wondering, sitting here, it's easier to sit here and listen to you. What can we do to help you in Idaho Falls and the surrounding area here. You can't be here all the time. There's so do you have somebody in Idaho Falls that kind of heads your campaign? If so, how do we get in touch with them, and what can we do to help them?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a 2-month sprint from here. I mean, that's what we're looking at. We have 2 months from today or tomorrow. And wow, it's a lot that needs to happen. We are raising money. We are increasing the amount of money that's being donated, which is great. We are having more and more people sign up to volunteer. We're over 100 people across the state, and they're eager to go knock doors and make phone calls and do those things. We have regional directors for volunteers, so there is one for this side of the state. Alex in the back can connect you with that regional volunteer, but the best way for you, if you're watching online or if you're here in this room, the best way for you to get involved to help our campaign is to go on markfitzidaho.com, F-I-T-Z, markfitzidaho.com, and register as a volunteer. There's 3 things we're asking on that website: volunteers, prayer support, like literally sign up to pray, and then financial support. So those things are very much needed. I wish the best for your daughter who's running. I do know Josh Roy. I've met him several times. I've seen him with his family. Seems like a great guy, and I think it's somebody that you guys should give some consideration to in his race against Rish. I do want to sit down a little bit more with him and have a little bit more conversation before I were to say, everybody, I need you to make sure you vote for him. But from what I see so far from him, he seems like a very reasonable guy and has like-minded. And I think that he is somebody worth giving a look at as you go and look at that vote again between him and Rish. So I think that answers your question probably. Yeah, so if you sign up as a volunteer on our website, they will get a hold of you, basically. It's going to be the regional volunteer here. The lady from Oregon. Christina, yes, from Oregon, yep.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
I'm Ethan Neff. I'm actually a candidate for Senate in District 30. I have a couple questions for you, but first of all, I wanted to mention that you kind of represent the sign behind you, it sounds like, standing up for Idaho, and thank you very much for that, because that's not often seen. And I will also be praying for you as well. A couple questions here. You've almost answered the first one already, so it might be really quick, but here it goes. What's your take? This is a fairly long question. What's your take on public welfare, basically? Any form of public funding for some sort of private interest that elevates one citizen over another with advantage? That's the first question. Second question. What's your take on Idaho government-owned land, such as BLM lands? Should it be government-owned or managed? And I'll go ahead and sit down. Just look forward to hearing.
Okay, first question. I believe that the best handling of any service, well, pretty much any service, is going to be done in the private sector. And that means that I generally am against the great majority of welfare ideas, government agencies that are set up with funding. I think that the American people, with their ingenuity and their hard work and their entrepreneurship, can set up situations that are far more efficient than our government does and has demonstrated for eons. That it does in a much less effective and less efficient way than the people in the private sector would do it. So my preference would be to have a very small government, very few agencies, as few as possible, and have that government essentially deliver the services the minimal amount of services that a government is supposed to deliver. Roads, building, some infrastructure, protecting us, etc. So that would be my answer to your first question. Second question, give me one word to remind me what it was. Okay, BLM. Okay, so this is something I'm learning more and more about, and I generally, about any land ideas, BLM, anything in Idaho, I believe that the land here should be to use to the best advantage of Idahoans. I don't know what that means in arguments with the federal government and stuff like that. I've never been a part of that, and I've never had that kind of education. Okay, but generally, I want to take as much advantage of that land for Idahoans to use for their pleasure, for hunting, for fishing, for all those things, for grazing their animals. I also would like to use that land responsibly for mining resources out of it. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. I don't think I talked about it with you, but our largest mining company, silver mining company in Idaho, is owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. If you know, you know. And so what that means is, and they're only paying 1% tax. So they come in and they're mining our precious metals out of Idaho, taking it out, and they're only paying us 1%. It used to be 3%. In 2002, I believe, there was some sort of legislative action that took place that reduced it to 1%. The excuse was that it was going to bring in a lot more mining activity by reducing that tax rate. Meanwhile, Alaska set up taxes and royalties where they get up to 10% on parts of their land, and we're getting 1%. And I think that's a major problem. The last study, people are saying, oh, it's insignificant, it doesn't matter. The last study was probably done, I think I was reading, and it was probably done at a silver value of $30. And I think it was something like $30 or $40 million we were making off the 1%. But I have a feeling silver is going to be $300 or $400 relatively soon. And that means it's 10 times more valuable. And if you take 10 times the amount of tax, let's put it up at 10% for the sake of this argument, and we increase the value of silver up 10 times, which it could be within a year, we're now at 100x of that 30 million, which puts us at 3 billion just for silver. So these numbers can change very quickly. And it's just one little tiny example that if people who know a lot more than I do about all this stuff start looking at our resources and how we can use it for our wealth in Idaho, that I think we can solve a lot of our tax problems, especially if we're cutting our government down. And perhaps we can eliminate entire taxes like property tax, which I would like to target that one first for people who are living in their primary residence. They should not be paying property tax. So I'd like to eliminate that one.
I just want to know if you know that geoengineering and chemtrails are real. And I think it's sad that we have to make so many laws because of evil and stupid people. But would you be in favor of the legislature making it illegal or wrong or stopping it?
Yeah, isn't it crazy that we have to think about making it a law that you can't fly over and dump poison on us? That's insane that we live in a world where we have to make a law. And then you go to make that law and people say, they pull a Jedi Knight trick, and they're like, it's not actually happening. So my answer to you is yes, I'm aware of them. Yes, I'm aware they're real. But if you, and I have read the response from the governor's office, and he says, no, those are contrails. It's condensation. It's not chemicals. The reality is right there, just one example on the Idaho Power website, they actually have a schedule of the chemicals that they drop in when they drop them and the time of year and everything else. And they say that it's to for weather modification and to produce more rain and water for everything. Is that true? I can't tell you whether it's true or not. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's something extremely concerning to me. I want to study it. I want to get a group of people together to study it and report the information to the people of Idaho so we can all make a decision about this. I want to eliminate as much poison as possible in our lives. I want to get it out of our soil. I want to get it out of our water. I want to get it out of our skies. I don't want to breathe it. I don't want to eat it. I want to get everybody healthy again. The crazy thing when you look across the world and to see all of these dyes and chemicals that are so illegal to have in food, and yet for some reason they have it in all of our food here. This is why at Old State Saloon, a commercial right now, There's no seed oil. We don't have seed oils at Old State Saloon. We have a lot of organic ingredients. It's all local as much as possible, homemade. And it's one of the few places I feel like I can take my family to actually fill our stomachs up with healthy food.
Just a few questions from
Online
people
questions. These might be a little bit racier since they don't have to be here in public. So let's see.
They're all good, actually. Just three here. Number one from Mr. Brad Landis. Is there a debate scheduled with Governor Little? Pretty easy question, but
There is not currently a debate scheduled. If I were a betting man, I would bet that there won't be a debate scheduled, but it's certainly not because I'm not willing to do it. I would say anytime, any place, I'll be there for a debate. And I'm going to do my best to use some of my creative marketing techniques that I talked about earlier to publicly encourage Governor Little to give consideration to doing a debate. We'll see how those go.
And then just a little follow-up from Mr. Brad. He just wanted to say that he received a free beer at your establishment, and he thinks that the friendly staff and friendly patrons are very nice.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And then two questions here from a Cat B. Question one, if you will get power, will you use it in the way that the God of the Bible prescribes?
So I'll try to do everything in the way that God of the Bible prescribes. One of the things you just reminded me with the question that I intend to do is actually work with the legislature on limiting the governor's power. I do not believe that we should have a situation where the governor can extend his own emergency powers and decisions for 900 and something days without the people coming together to make a decision about something. Go ahead.
And question number two from Kat. Would you legalize fully automatic weapons and suppressors?
So I'm a big fan of the words shall not be infringed. And I'm a big Second Amendment guy. I've carried a firearm on me ever since I turned 21 and became a police officer. So that's 27 years I've carried a firearm on me every day. And I have one on my person now, and that's I believe that a well-armed society is a safe and courteous society. And one of the creative things that I would like to do would be to make it a tax-deductible thing when you go purchase a firearm or ammunition in Idaho. Yeah, that includes suppressors. And I am for people having suppressors, so that directly answers the question. There shouldn't be... I went during, I think it was 21 or 2, I had to wait like 16 months or something to get one.
Any other questions? Oh, okay.
Hi. I come from a very conservative family, but unfortunately my younger generations have come out being very woke. And I think a lot of it comes from the schools. And I was wondering what you thought we should do in the schools and the woke teachers that are currently employed.
I think our efforts for things like school choice and redirecting money towards what the parents choose is great, because you're pulling money away from that system that's corrupting them, okay? It's being created purposely to do that. You and I know that. For me today, in today's world, my advice to parents would be to homeschool. That's what we do. For our kids, they're very involved and very socialized. In fact, usually when I'm out with my family, somebody comes up and says, "Your kids are homeschooled, aren't they?" And I say, "Yes." And I say, "How do you know?" And well, they walked up to me and gave me a firm handshake and looked me in the eye, and we engaged in an actual mature conversation. And that type of thing is much more likely to happen when children are properly educated and not on devices and screens and distracted, and in a situation where they are not engaging with a family that loves them, or instructors that love and care for them in a biblical manner. So as close as we can as a society to get to that, I think is great. Even some of these little bills and laws that get passed to take us a little bit, inch us back towards, having the 10 Commandments on the wall of our classrooms, having a moment of prayer each day where they're encouraged to pray, things like that, and certainly protecting them from being discriminated against for wanting to pray, which I got the opportunity of watching Coach Joe, who went all the way to the Supreme Court. I don't know if you know that story, but he was recently at an event, but he prayed on the 50-yard line and he was getting fired or discriminated against it. And we need to have people have the right to be Christian in our public schools without being discriminated against.
I have one more simple question. When you get elected, would you consider giving me a ride in your truck if I come down to Boise?
Okay, so people make fun of me for my truck. I do have a Cybertruck, and I want you to know that I love my Cybertruck, and I also love the 1954 Chevy. It's okay to love both of those things, and I'm not talking like as an idol, of course not. But I think it's really cool to have the technology and going 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds in my truck, and having it be able to drive itself. And it's also really cool to have that old school truck that they just don't make it like they used to, and that's really just awesome and nostalgic. I think both of those things are awesome at the same time. So yes, when I'm elected, yes, you can have and we're going to do a launch, and I'm telling you, it's like you got to put your head back, because it'll snap your neck back. It's pretty crazy.
Okay. Any other questions? Now, I'll just say this. We normally don't take online questions. Okay, that's to get people to get here so that, the speaker can at least appreciate it. But I decided to have a little bit of an exception this time. So anyway, any other questions? Okay, we have 2 more questions.
It's a bit of a trip to Idaho Falls. Thank you for coming.
You're quite welcome.
You speak a lot about Christ and quote scriptures. And how are you going to structure your campaign that you tear down the walls of religion and unify the Christian communities together so that we fight the same battle and unite as one to elect good politicians, namely you?
All right. That's a good question. I appreciate that question. And so I will admit here, with what I've done with Old State Saloon, I've created a very brash and honest and blunt brand that has a bit of an attitude, and it will just punch you in the face with truth, basically. And that's not it, although the ideas and the truth and everything, it comes from me, the intent is there to start a conversation with people and to build a following and to expose people to truth, even it being very blunt. And in reading scripture, I will say that Jesus was very blunt with people, and he offended a lot of people. So we do have the obligation of making sure we deliver truth to people. As a Christian man, you're asking me, I would say that what I want to do is deliver Christian truth, the gospel message to people. Once we get past that, if they say, oh, interesting, thank you for sharing that, I don't believe that. No problem. That's your choice. Now, what do we agree on? How can we move forward to make this world a better place? Because there are a lot of people who don't agree with what I agree or what I believe. But yet they would be very useful if we could unite to completely eradicate all of the transgenderism from our schools and everything else, right? So I think that's kind of what you're asking is how do we do that? One idea I have, and this goes back to being a populist governor, is that I would have regular meetings with leaders in the church. And I would encourage those leaders in the church to have regular meetings with people in their church who feel a call to be a leader. And I think that we need more ministries that would build up and support and educate and train the type of people who founded our country. And they founded this country on biblical Christian principles. And so you're asking me what I would like to see. I would like to see a lot more people who are encouraged by their local church to, you're talking about being a leader. How can we get around you to help you and support you and train you and be there for you, to put you in a position on the local school board or on the health board, or to run against Mark Fitzpatrick in 4 years from now as governor, whatever the case may be, right? But I think that that we need to get the church involved. And what I'm going to do specifically is to regularly meet with pastors and other leaders. I will frequently talk about these things and the importance of churches getting involved in the political and culture wars. And I think that will be a refreshing change, just that in of itself. But more communication, more talking is the way that, as I'm standing here and thinking about it, the first way that I would say to do that.
My question is, during a while back, we had Proposition 1 here in Idaho, which was a big one. And originally, when I looked at the proposition, I thought, well, it says they're taking away the veterans' right to choice, which I love the veterans. So I'm thinking, I'm voting for Proposition 1 until I came up here and started reading on some of the, get that right and left. My question is,
are you talking about ranked choice voting?
Yeah.
Okay. Making sure.
And I was kind of worked up about that, because I thought, you can't take away the, being the fool that I am. I said, you can't take away the veterans' right to choice. When I learned more on the subject, I thought, they're not taking away the choice. But the thing is, they had a lot of out-of-state money they talked about coming, just pouring in from Washington, Oregon, California. I'm like, how can we stop or curtail that stuff? I mean, it's like if you get the union says, okay, that's fine, we're in Idaho, take this money, but the unions are going, all over the United States, here, give us more money, and they kept on running out these truths, which, if you looked at it, I told other people, if you looked at it going, yeah, it looks bad, until you look at the big thing. So how can we keep Idaho, and not go, okay, it's Idaho, and Montana, and everybody else? I mean, keep that money here.
I understand. So I'll give you a couple other examples here. We're looking at the return of an initiative to legalize abortion. And also in that bill initiative, there would be they slip in there the ability for essentially surgeries for transgenderism, even for children and everything else. It's like, this is a massively evil bill they think is going to wind up on the November ballot this year. And it's like, man, didn't we just deal with this a couple years ago? Didn't we just make abortion illegal, completely, and have a stronger law put in place regarding that? And are we going to have to keep revisiting these issues? Well, if we don't change things, we will be revisiting Prop 1 again, and it will come back up again, ranked choice voting. Why? Because it's a leftist liberal tactic to, in a sneaky way, get laws passed and people elected and things like that they want to get elected. So they'll stack it with a certain amount of people. They know the votes will be split a certain way, and then it makes it more likely for one of their extremely leftist people to get in a position under the banner potentially of being a Republican, which we do have plenty of those happen. So how do you fight all this stuff? Well, you build a state that's so strong, full of people who are standing on righteousness and truth and conservative values that they all know across the country. It's not even worth trying to mess with Idaho. They got it locked down. That's what we have to do. We need to build that society. if we don't build that society, it's going to keep coming. We need to have the people be so involved with the government and be so wanting truth in everything that we do and transparency that nobody will try to mess with us again, because we'll be so strong and united together.
Got a fun one, I think. Your top 2 U.S. presidents and why?
All right, so I would say Trump is going to be one of them. And I think it's a little bit easier to say, he's in my lifetime, and I feel like I personally have woken up to a lot of deception and evil in the world, and I think a lot of it has to do with what he has done. And when this man talked about draining the swamp, when he first started saying those words, I think if we're all honest, we had no idea the depth of that, what that meant. And he has exposed media for being liars and swamp creatures and all the wonderful words that he describes them as. And he's called out people publicly, and he exposes people, and he's not afraid to. He's an outsider. He's not a career politician. There's a lot of those types of things that I feel very similar that I want to do. And I like the populist nature of the way he does business. Second one, I will say I'm not a wonderful, amazing student of history. I would say that if we're talking about Trump being today's president, for my next choice, because there's a lot of our history in the last 150 years that I seem to almost distrust more than the history before that, if that makes sense. And I don't know if anybody else feels the same way. So I would have to go to one of our founding fathers, one of our original presidents. And I don't know that I'm really going to name one more than another here, but I would just say that they risked it all. And I don't feel like there's another point in history where we have the example of a president who risked it all compared to what Trump has done today and what they did back at the beginning. And on that note, I am at a point in my life where I just want truth, and I will risk it all. I will risk it all for truth. If we can get things back corrected and back in a direction that's God-honoring, I will risk it all. And I have. I mean, I have. It's been pretty crazy, the things that have happened to me the last 3 years. And I have a feeling it'll get, even more difficult. So I do feel kind of just aligned, very much aligned with those situations of those two. We're at a point in history right now where, and I know that this has been said a lot in the past, and I feel like the times it was said in the past is like child's play compared to today. Today is the day where it's so obvious that our country is going to be destroyed and implode, and we're going to be potentially in some sort of like kinetic war on our own soil, or the people are going to step up and correct course. And I think we can correct course, and I think we can do it with actually a small percentage of people to just say, let's go, let's do this, let's risk it all and bring this country back to righteousness and goodness.
Well, let's take 30, and I think Mark's done a... Do you have another closing statement you want to make, or the one you just did sounded pretty good? So you have another... I
just want to say thank you guys for coming out. I really do have fun doing these and getting to meet people and getting to know you and answering questions. And I hope that you can see with what I'm doing here, I hope you're like, yeah, when that guy says he's going to meet with the people, I can tell he's serious. He is definitely going to be meeting with the people. That's, that to me, this is fun. After I'm governor, it'll be a blast. We will do that and have pizza parties at the Lincoln Auditorium in our Capitol building. It'll be a blast. And we'll broadcast it live for everybody to see across the state. And I'll travel around. I want to get to know people in Idaho. I love you guys, and I want to serve you. And I hope that you would vote for me on May 19th in the Republican primary. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And, one thing I want to say is, he pointed out, and we have to remind ourselves of this. Idaho is a great state, and we love it, and there's a lot of good things. But we are not immune to what's going on in the rest of the world and the rest of the country. The corruption that he just mentioned, the fraud, those type things. A lot of us, and I know people today, they'll say, oh, no, it's not happening here. It absolutely is. And for us to think that it is not, that's a problem, because they want you to think that it's not happening so that you will ignore it. But it is happening. We have to pay attention. And with that, again, I'm going to say, Mark, thank you. I appreciate it very much. And give him a big hand. And remember, next week what we have going, we have, I even forgot, Stephen Adams talking about natural rights and the Declaration of Independence. It's all about us, the people, we the people, and who we are. So thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll see you next week. God bless, and be safe. Bye-bye.